right, folks, welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo, and what an absolutely awesome weekend. All 32 teams are in training camp getting ready for the 2026 NFL season. We are also 28 days away from the start of college football. I mean, right around the corner, TCU versus UNC in week 0. So much to get to. Major League Baseball trading deadline coming up on Monday. Guys, fire the cannons. Well, let's start it off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. An absolute train wreck going on for Jason Light, the general manager of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's put this all in context here. Mike Evans in the offseason says the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not a Super Bowl contending team. What does he do? One of the greatest, if not the greatest offensive player in the history of the Buccaneers, decides to leave and go to San Francisco. In his introduction interview and his introduction press conference, what does he say? I'm glad to be in a place that has a true chance to win a Super Bowl. Fast forward. Now you end up pissing off Vita Vea, their best defensive lineman that they've had since Warren Sapp. Look, Tampa Bay doesn't do a lot of good things on defense, but a year ago, the one thing that they do, well, that is stop the run. And if you don't have Vita Vea on the field, you are not a good defensive football team. What does he say? I demand a trade. Contract negotiations not going very well. He wants to go play on the West Coast, either with the San Francisco 49ers or with the Las Vegas Raiders. And so they have to deal with that mess. Then they piss on Baker Mayfield. Look, Baker Mayfield came to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and remember something, he had to go and battle out whether or not he was going to be the starting quarterback after Tom Brady with that stiff Kyle Trask, who has done nothing and getting workouts now to hopefully end up making a football team. That was a poor draft choice by Jason Light. That was supposed to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady, the second-round pick out of Florida. What happens? Well, Baker Mayfield in 3 years has rejuvenated his career. It's been one of the best reclamation projects next to Sam Darnold. And here he is. He's looking for a contract that's got a 5 on it. You know what the Buccaneers offered? A 2-year extension. He's like, forget it. Let's not forget something about Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has gambled on himself before. He did it at Texas Tech. He did it at Oklahoma. And he'll do it again here. You talk about an open market at the end of this year. If Mayfield has a year like he did 2 years ago, and he puts up 4,500 passing yards and 41 touchdowns, you're going to have a boatload of teams vying for his services. And one of the things you have to love about this guy, let's not forget the incompetence of the Carolina Panthers. They had both Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield playing scout team defensive end 3 years ago. Think they'd like to have that project back again and maybe have one of those guys as their starting quarterback? Absolutely true. Man, Mayfield wants a deal, and the Bucs have hedged. The guy's delivered. It's time to pay the guy. So let's go to this new 30 for 30 that's coming out. So I really love the 30 for 30 series that ESPN has. It's one of the very few things that they do well is the 30 for 30. And there's going to be one coming out on Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter, the portrayal of Shohei Ohtani. The series will feature never before heard or seen video and audio of his interpreter and talking about the gambling scandal. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. You've got 17 million reasons not to believe this. Isn't it funny? That's the number on his gear, 17. Supposedly, that's the number that the interpreter stole. Now, I don't know about you, but I just asked all my producers, how many times do you check your bank account daily or weekly? Everybody says, well, I check it. You're telling me that Shohei Ohtani didn't see $17 million out of his bank account on placing illegal gambling bets? Major League Baseball has covered this story up, and I can't think that this 30 for 30 is something that Rob Manfred wants out there showing Major League Baseball's incompetence. Pete Rose must be rolling over in his grave right now. You're talking $17 million with the best player in the sport and a unicorn in the sport, and one of the absolutely greatest players that we've ever seen. And he's also a Japanese player, which brings tremendous revenue over from Japan to Major League Baseball. No wonder they want to keep this thing quiet. Nobody in their right mind can believe this story. $17 million of illegal gambling debt, and Major League Baseball has just brushed this under the carpet. You know, we're in an era now. We see this all the time, especially with these storylines that are going in the NFL and in college football when it talks about gambling. Major League Baseball has their biggest star wrapped in a gambling scandal, and they just blew it off. They blew it off because he is the golden child. He's a guy that everybody looks at right now, and I can't believe it. They just pushed that entire story under the table. $17 million? Give me a break. Look, I check my account daily, like every other American does, to see where we are. And I get it. By the way, that $700 million was deferred. And most of the money that he's going to make is going to be after he leaves the game of baseball. It's pretty crazy to think that Major League Baseball just took a blind eye to this story. I can't wait to see this 30 for 30. But I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. All right. So we had a loss this week. A National Football League treasure was lost, and a workmate that I had when I worked at the Mighty 1090 in San Diego, the legendary Billy Ray Smith. One of the greatest college football players of all time, a two-time consensus college football player, and an opportunity to go into the National Football League. And he was drafted, folks, in the greatest draft of all time in 1983, 5th overall. That's the Elway Marino draft. It's considered the greatest draft, and he went 5th overall to the San Diego Chargers and had a brilliant career for 10 years. As Dean Spano said, to know Billy Ray is to love Billy Ray. I had the privilege of knowing him as a player and also a workmate, as I said, when I worked at the Mighty 1090. You will never meet a person with a harder handshake and a person that was just nothing but just a giving man and truly one of the greats of all time. My message is for the NFL Players Association. When are you going to start doing the right thing and protecting these players that have played the game? Billy Ray didn't know who he was when he left. Had no idea at times who his daughter or his wife were. Can you imagine having a celebrated life like that, and at the end, you couldn't share it with anybody because you don't know and remember the things that you have accomplished? He's one of the most accomplished people I've ever been around. He's one of the most accomplished men I've known. And it was a privilege to know that man and work with that guy. Just a truly great person, broadcaster, entrepreneur, things he did in the community. You talk about a San Diego legend, Tony Gwynn, him, guys that were in that market. And every time you walked up, he was so accessible. Just like Tony Gwynn. When Tony Gwynn passed away years ago, there was an opportunity. People would come up to me and go, Sills, he would talk to me about his time at San Diego State. Same with Billy Ray. Truly lost a legend. All right, our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason, with over $30 billion recovered. Folks, there's no other company like Morgan & Morgan. Tell you about the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650,000. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family that was initially offered $350K. They got nearly $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/Big Sills or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/Big Sills or pound law 529, and do me a favor. You tell them Big Sills sent you. We got a big date coming up on Monday. Here's the MLB trading deadline. We'll talk to the legendary Bob Nightengale next here on SportsGrid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. We've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, baseball has got a big date coming up on Monday, and what's going to be the storylines coming out on Monday for the Major League Baseball trading deadline on August 3rd. And we have our friend Bob Nightengale from USA Today. Bob, you think this is going to be an active trading deadline for Major League Baseball teams?
Well, last year, there were about 63 trades on that Monday. So hopefully we'll get something, at least in the 40s to do that. Trouble is, Danny, is that 24 teams are within 4.5 games of a playoff berth. So there's hardly any sellers. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to buy.
Yeah, no doubt. What teams do you expect to be buyers? Do you think the Dodgers are going to be in the conversation as always? I mean, they've just got a wealth of riches. Could you see a team like Tampa Bay being a team that could be in that conversation? And Bob, who would have thought this? I don't know how they did it, but Boston, here they are. They get rid of Alex Cora at the beginning of the year, and everybody was talking and saying to John Henry, sell the damn team. And all of a sudden now they're fighting out for a playoff spot right now. And as you just said, everybody's within striking distance. Is there going to be a particular team that you think is going to be particularly active?
Well, I think Tampa Bay will be very aggressive. You talk to GMs, and they say they got scouts everywhere. So I think Tampa will be very aggressive because the American League is so wide open. You're right about Boston. I mean, they're like 14 games below 500. Then they went 21-4 in July, and now they're just 6 games back, right in the middle of a wild card derby. So yeah, they're a completely different team.
How'd they turn it around, Bob? In your opinion, what was the determining factor? I mean, I can't think firing Alex Cora was that big a deal, but here we are, like you said. I mean, the last month and a half, this team's been on fire and maybe the best team in the American League right now. How'd they turn it around?
Yeah, started pitching on their mind, so the pitching was really dominant. And just guys came together, and the more they won, the more confidence they had and everything else. So, but yeah, it was a pitching that was just lights out, during that whole stretch. And that's why they traded away, early to the Nationals to get some offensive help. Then, of course, Meade gets hurt the first day they get him. But they're still looking for a shortstop. They think if they get a shortstop, they got a chance to go to the World Series.
All right. I made a comment about the Shohei Ohtani 30 for 30, the betrayal of Shohei Ohtani that's coming out with ESPN. Bob, what was your takeaway? Hey, Bob, I asked all my producers how many times a day and a week do they check their bank account. I know this, Bob, you and me, if we miss $17 million out of our bank account, we're going to know some things are not going on and not right here. What was your takeaway with the story? and also how Rob Manfred in baseball handled it.
Well, I know his agent well. I know the bookie very well. And Otani is very naive, and this guy makes so much money. They don't doubt that he didn't know what was going on. I mean, he never did anything with the bank. He didn't drive his own, have a driver's license or anything like that. So the 17 million is very plausible. The one thing that doesn't make sense is that, his guy, he was one of his best friends, that he didn't know that he was gambling. That a guy can't have that kind of poker face and be, ecstatic when you win a few million or depressed when you lose a few million. The bookie, Matthew has no idea whether he ever bet on sports. He says always through his interpreter, Ippy. So, he wants to believe that. And if he knew about it, all it was going to be was a wrist slap because it wasn't doing through DraftKings or something else. It wouldn't have been a big thing. And never even did the bookie, never did the interpreter bet on baseball. So it was just, kind of hurts his reputation, but it wasn't going to be a suspension, anything like that.
Bob, tell me what the difference in between what he did and what Rose did. And I know Rose was in a place of a figurehead of being the manager of the Reds, but how do you know Otani decided not to pitch one day or decided not to hit that particular day or what have you? I mean, there's so many things because of all the players in Major League Baseball that could actually throw a game. Here's a guy that's in control of the mound and also at the dish. He's one of the very unique guys that could be in that position to do things that could be, again, questioned. I'm not saying, and I'm not throwing anything out like that, but when you lose that kind of money, Bob, that's not just losing 17 cents. I mean, that's $17 million of so-called illegal gambling. I mean, kind of fishy, no?
Well, yeah, I don't think he had any idea he was losing that kind of money. Like I said, I mean, he makes about, $120 million off the field. Yeah, so, money's going to factor to Otani. People give him everything. So the difference, of course, is Rose bet on baseball. In the nights he wasn't betting, so all the bookies said, okay, means he thinks his team's going to lose. So, yeah, that's a big difference. If you bet on the sport, you're gone. Even if you have the umpire, Pat Holberg, had his buddies were betting on baseball, and there's phone calls between him and that. Holberg didn't throw any games or do anything with pitches, but just the fact he had some information and was passing it along, he's been banned for life. So, yeah, that's the big difference.
If I'm not mistaken, Bob, correct me, in 2027, I believe is the first time that Rose's face can be on that or name can be on that ballot for you guys to induct potentially in 2028. Do you think he gets into the Baseball Hall of Fame? Do you think he's going to have enough sentiment in how baseball has treated it? Because you were at the Hall of Fame last week. I was just curious what you guys would be thinking as his name comes up on the ballot. Do you think he's got a decent shot at getting in finally to baseball's Hall of Fame?
I used to. I don't think he gets in. I don't think he'll ever get in. I just think that was a cardinal sin, betting on baseball. And I think they'll stack those contemporary. Remember, there's only 16 people on those contemporary era ballots or voters. And I think they'll stack the ballot to make sure that he doesn't get in. So, you're not going to put in the PD guys. Are you going to bet, there was never signs in the clubhouse, don't use PEDs, but there were signs everywhere, don't gamble on baseball. So I don't think he gets in. I really don't.
What would you do when A-Rod's name becomes available for induction into the Hall of Fame? How will you handle him, Bob? You think he gets into baseball's Hall of Fame?
I don't. I mean, he's still on the writer's ballot. I don't vote for him. I vote for Bonds and Clemens every year and Sammy Sosa. But there was no rule back then. There was no drug testing. In A-Rod's case, he got the biggest drug suspension in baseball history. He violated that thing, just like Manny Ramirez violated it. So I think it's apples and oranges. I think that's my distinction. So I think Bonds and Clemens should be in, but not A-Rod.
All right, we'll continue more of our conversation. If Bob was a betting man, where does Scrooble go? We'll do that next here on SportsGrid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. We've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Obviously, the big name that's going to be at the trading deadline for Major League Baseball has got to be Skubal and what the Tigers do with him. Bob, you're a betting man. Does he stay pat, or do you think he'll be playing somewhere else after August 3rd?
He'll be playing for somebody else. They're just too mediocre of a team. They want to stay in the race, but I think they'll get some pitching back in return so they can at least tell their fans and players, hey, we're still trying here. So realistically, there's about 4 teams involved in Skubal. It's the Dodgers, Chicago Cubs, Atlanta, Tampa Bay Rays, and in Milwaukee. So 5 teams. And I think he's going to the Dodgers. The Dodgers have more prospects than anybody but Milwaukee. They can pick up $9.5 million of his salary. I just don't think Milwaukee has a stomach to do that where the Dodgers do.
Wow, the Dodgers continue to get richer. I'm sure that's going to go well, right, Bob, when it comes to the negotiations with this work stoppage that the Dodgers are going out and getting Skubal here. All right. So, listen, we talked a little bit in a timeout here about the Yankees. What do you think the Yankees' plan is as they get closer to the trading deadline? Will they be sellers, buyers? What do you think they do?
Well, certainly buyers. I mean, they need another right-handed reliever for sure. In that bullpen. They love to have Mason Miller, but the Padres are back in it, so he's not available. Could get Morejon, their setup guy from the Padres. They'll love to get Luke Weaver back. I'm not sure, how much it'll take to get him. And they need some offensive help too. They need a bat somewhere. So many teams need bats. They wanted Ryan Jeffers from the Twins, but the Twins are only 3 games back in the division race now. I think 1 game back or tied in the wild card race. So they didn't make 2 big moves. But let's be honest, if Aaron Judge doesn't come back, they're just spinning their wheels. They got no chance of Judge doesn't come back.
Let me take you to Philly and Dave Dombrowski. Is Dave going to be active in your opinion? I'll tell you what, the last couple weeks with the Phillies, they can't get a guy across the dish, Bob. They're struggling at getting runs across. Pitching has been real good, obviously, but do they go out and try to find a bat?
Yeah, they've been looking forever for right-handed hitting outfielder. They want one bad. I think Joe Adele makes a lot of sense for them from the Angels. He's left-handed, but they could go get Dalton Varsho. They had to have another left-handed bat. Could go get Varsho. they need a reliever. Maybe bring back Jeff Hoffman from Toronto. Used to pitch for the Phillies, of course. But yeah, they need some help. They're fading away here. Right now, they're just kind of clinging on to the last wild card spot, just one game ahead of the Padres.
What's the Chapman market like?
Well, it was great a month ago, and now with the Red Sox going 21-4 in July, it's non-existent. So, yeah, you're talking about Aroldis, right? Not Matt?
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, Aroldis isn't going anywhere. Now, Matt Chapman, the Giants would like to trade. They like to trade him, but Aroldis is staying put.
How shocked have you been with the White Sox this year? I was told when you and I talked at the beginning of the season, Bob, this is a 65-win baseball team. I mean, here they are right now, and they're in the top of their division. How shocked are you?
Stunned. I was talking to their owner Jerry Reinsdorf up in Cooperstown, and we're trying to decide what's been the biggest surprise. If they make the playoffs, it might be going way back to like 1991 when the Twins in Atlanta were in the World Series. They both went from last to first. But you're talking about the worst team in baseball history 2 years ago. Lost 101, 102 games last year, and now they may win the division, which is shocking.
Will Venable, I mean, manager of the year?
Absolutely, it's got to be unanimous at this point. What he's done, if they win the division, yeah, he's got to get all 30 first place votes for sure.
Bob, I've got to do this to you all the time, and you and me, we kind of goofed around last year about this, but the Milwaukee Rancho Cucamongas, there they are again. I mean, I looked up, and there's like 4 guys with over 10 home runs on the team. There's guys hitting around 263. How are they doing it again? I mean, that is just a well-run organization. How are they in a position they're in?
Yeah, they're the National League's version of the Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, you imagine if these guys ever had money. They just develop out guys right, get the right people in there. It's unbelievable what they do year after year. Nobody ever predicts them to win the division. They're supposed to win 83, 84 games this year, Vegas odds and all that. And they might end up with the best record in baseball once again. So fabulous front office, fabulous scouts, and everything else.
Well, I've spared you the Met conversation, so we don't have to go down that lane of talking about the New York Mets, because I guarantee you there's going to be a cleaning of the house there. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate you so much. We're going to talk some NFL football with David Bearman next here on SportsGrid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. We've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
No doubt, man. It's time to talk some National Football League here with David Bearman here. We were just talking. Nothing like, ACC football, right? Before we get to the NFL, Miami and Stanford. Back in the day, it used to be Miami versus Florida, but here we are, right?
Miami, Florida State. Can you imagine sitting at the OB right now and just Stanford's coming in? It just doesn't have the same feel. I mean, it's weird when you're sitting there thinking Miami. I remember last year or 2 years ago when they played at Cal and that game ended at like 1:30 in the morning. It was a fantastic Miami comeback. And you're like, did I just stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning to watch University of Miami game? Like, that just doesn't compute. They don't play West Coast games, and here they are at Cal. So.
No doubt, man. It's the landscape of college sports today for sure. So let's take it over to the NFL and go up to the big boys. Everybody's in training camp, all 32 teams as they prep up for the start of the 2026 season. I want to take you to Tampa first. Holy cow, Baker Mayfield. You talk about a guy that's gambled on himself. He did it when he was in college. He did it, obviously, at Oklahoma and Texas Tech. And here he is again telling people, I won a 5 at the beginning of that deal. Supposedly, the Buccaneers offered him a 2-year contract extension. He wants a 4-year deal. How do you think this thing plays out, especially with this offseason the Bucs have had? They lose Mike Evans. Vita Vea wants to be traded. I mean, doesn't look good for Jason Light here.
No, and I saw this coming years ago with the way the QB market has evolved and reset the numbers. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is like the 9th highest paid quarterback. Like, these guys keep resetting the market every year, and in Baker's defense, if Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence and Brock Purdy have a 5 in front of their number, then why not Baker Mayfield, who arguably has outplayed every single one of them over the last 3 years with the Bucs? And the fact that he turned down a 2-year, $100 million contract to me isn't about the $50 million a year. He's going to get his $50 million a year. The Bucs already offered it. He don't want 2 years. He wants more than that. He has proven that he can be the Bucs' cornerstone. And this is not something you would have thought of 3 years ago when they signed him to the original deal. But he has proven that, yes, last year was a little bumpy with injuries, but he's led them to a couple of division titles. They were right there last year. And if you're the Bucs and you want this to continue, you have to sign your quarterback. It is what has blasted some of these teams for years, whether you're the Atlanta Falcons, the New York Jets, the Miami Dolphins. You got to pay your quarterback. The Dolphins paid the price with Tua, obviously let him go. But if you're the Bucs, you really don't have a choice. And unfortunately, that's what the quarterback market has become. When you look at Brock Purdy, who good, but really, what has he proven? And he's getting $53 million a year. And Trevor Lawrence, great. He had a good season last year. Before that, absolutely nothing. These guys are all getting $50 to $55 million a year. And Baker's like, why not me? And I don't blame him, quite frankly. And they're gonna play musical chairs here. They're gonna feel each other out. But the difference is Baker has a deadline, and they didn't make that deadline, and he's pissed off, and rightfully so.
Here's one counter on this here. Now, we saw it in Seattle here. Look, these guys are really good players, David, but this is exceptional money. Do you think more teams are going to start looking at what Seattle did with what John Schneider? You got a $30 million a year quarterback you just won the Super Bowl with, and he was a reclamation project. Am I really going to put all my resources behind one guy who's a good player? And you're right. Mayfield has done exactly everything you wanted him to do the last 3 years there at quarterback. However, spending that kind of money where I could spend, I'd rather have the roster than the elite guy. Because doesn't it show you? You don't have to be elite at that position to win a Super Bowl. The last 2 quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls, I think, prove that out.
They have proven it out, but the problem is Baker was that reclamation project. He was the guy that they brought in for $30 million. He's just 3 years past Sam Darnold. So they did do that. And anytime you look at these projects, these quarterbacks who revived their career, you look at Baker and then you look at Sam Darnold. But Baker was first. He got the same deal that Sam Darnold currently has. So now it's like, all right, what's next? Now I'm in the stratosphere with Lamar Jackson and Trevor Lawrence and all these guys that got paid. Now, do I think he's Patrick Mahomes? No, but he is a quarterback to lead the team to the playoffs. He has proven that. I do agree with your point. Like, you want to have the roster flexibility. Even the Chiefs weren't paying Patrick Mahomes God money when they were concentrating on building the trenches. Patrick Mahomes keeps redoing his deal. The Patriots did it for a decade with Tom Brady. Tom Brady was never the highest paid quarterback in the league, and that gave them the flexibility. But if I'm Baker, I know what the salary cap is. I read his quotes. He goes, I know what the cap is. I know how much money Tampa has. Pay me what I get. They're going to pay him $50 million because they already offered that. If you just extended that to 4 years, which I think is what Baker wants, that's the tricky part. Tampa's like, we'll give you 50, but it's 2 years. No, I want 4 years at 50. I don't know if you're Tampa, if you say I'm going to tie you up for 4 years, but you can work it out. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has 1 year deals that they can get out of all the time. It's doable. I just think at this point he feels insulted. But there was another comment he said, this is what the Bucs do. And unfortunately, that's what the Bucs organization does. But at the end of the day, when was the last quarterback that didn't get paid? They all get paid. They play this dance. Not going to pay you. I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pick your fifth-year option. I'm not going to pick up your fifth-year option. Who hasn't gotten paid? Every single one of them has gotten paid if they show a pulse, and he'll get his money.
Absolutely. Let me take you up to New England. So I want to read you a resume here. So A.J. Brown, last 4 years, 50 and 18, 2 NFC championships, a Super Bowl win, $32 million. Why is he going to be happy in New England? I mean, it's just the fact that it's a better quarterback that can throw the ball. When I say better quarterback, more of a high volume quarterback compared to what they were doing in Philly. Is that going to make him happy?
I'm not sure it's necessarily a better quarterback. I mean, you can compare Jalen Hurts to Drake May 10 different ways to Sunday. I think it's the situation. The last 2 years in Philly where, I mean, you won your Super Bowl and then you came back with another offensive coordinator who did not utilize A.J. Brown at all. And I think that if A.J. Brown knew that they were going to have a new offensive coordinator again, which they fired the guy, 6 months ago, they may have, it was too little too late. And I think it comes down to the offense itself. Obviously, Josh McDaniel runs a completely different offense in New England. A.J. will be happy if A.J. gets the ball. And A.J. did not get the ball last year, and he's just the type of wide receiver, going back to the Keyshawn Johnson days, just give me the damn ball, and that just wasn't the Philadelphia offense that was run. And sometimes it doesn't take a lot. When you win a Super Bowl 1 year and you have problems the next, you're gone. If Philadelphia could have fixed the problem, maybe A.J. Brown stays, but I think there was a lot of clubhouse issues with Jalen and et cetera. So will he be happy in New England? Are any wide receivers happy?
No. No, absolutely not. All right. Well, we talked about reclamation projects. You think Kyler Murray could be that guy up in Minnesota? I mean, that's a heck of a roster they have up there. They've got a great defensive coordinator. What's your takeaway on what impact he has up there with the Vikings?
I mean, I think he's going to be the quarterback. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy didn't prove anything when he was there. I just don't see that team having the same success that Tampa and Seattle had. Could they make the playoffs? Maybe. That's a very, very tough division. I love the coach. I love the roster. I just don't think Kyler Murray has the arm to get it done there. Can he scramble? Can he run around? Kyler Murray is just missing something because he had weapons in Arizona. He didn't have the coach. He didn't have the same type of things, but I don't think Kyler Murray is as good as the Kyler Murray that came out as, the number 1 overall pick. So I'd be very wary in Minnesota that this is the guy. I don't think they have their quarterback yet, which is sad because they got a hell of an offensive coach in O'Connell, and they have the weapons with Jefferson and company. They just haven't figured. They should have kept Darnold is what they should have done.
And real quick, Packers are the most complete team in the North, right, in the NFC?
I would say top to bottom, if you count the coaching and the roster, then yes. I don't necessarily think they have the explosiveness and the top-end stuff that Detroit has. I'm not sure they have as good of a coach as Chicago has, but if you put out the entire roster and franchise, then yeah, I would say they're the most complete team.
Yeah, and every single team in that division last year finished above 500, so we'll continue more of our conversation with David here, talking NFL football here on SportsGrid.
I know you didn't. Talk!
I'm innocent.
Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time.
Yeah.
Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury, that's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
Talking some NFL with David Bearman here on SportsGrid here, and I want to get your thoughts here. We were just talking in the timeout here about the Eagles and Kevin Petula, what a bad offensive coordinator he was a year ago. But here they do it again. They go down that same lane with an inexperienced play caller. Why will this year be different than a year ago when Nick Sirianni, the head coach, is going down the same lane?
I mean, this is their fifth offense coordinator in 5 years. And do I think they're Super Bowl? No. But I think they're better than last year's team that, basically bailed out in the first round of the NFL playoffs for San Francisco. Mannion is new, but what I like about that is that he runs behind center offense. And if you've looked at the Eagles offense, especially in Petula, it was shotgun left, shotgun right. There was no motions. There was no nothing. You knew what the Eagles were going to do before they knew what they were going to do. Under center, Saquon Barkley averages 5.3 yards per carry. He did not average that last year. The Saquon Barkley of 2024 and 2025, completely different because of the offense. Different offensive run. The explosive plays weren't there. The home run hitting. He was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage and the snuff plays a lot more than the year before. Put Jalen Hurts behind center every once in a while and get Saquon that burst right through there, open up the offense, and all of a sudden it's a different story. Do I think it's 2024 caliber? No, but I think they will be better in 25, and I'm really interested to see that Cowboys-Eagles battle for that division.
Boy, I'll tell you, I heard a lot of barking coming out of Dallas this past week. I mean, you know what? I'm going to say, David, once again, I know, right? I mean, you need to start doing some barking in January and February, not in July and August here. I mean, Cowboys 2026 will be what, in your opinion?
I think they make the playoffs. This is all assuming health is not a problem and Dak stays healthy. They have the weapons. You got Javonte Williams. You got CeeDee Lamb. You got Pickens. You have the weapons. They improved the defense, bringing in Gary. Like, they have the weapons to win that division. It's just what's going to happen. And I said this last year, not expecting Dak to get injured. I thought that from a betting value, for the first time in a decade, the Cowboys had betting value because everybody is all right. They're just enough talk about the Cowboys. They're going to disappoint. And the number was 7.5 for the win total. And I went over it, which may have hit had they not gotten injuries. But you look at it this year, can they win that division? I mean, they can win the division if the Eagles played the way they played last year because Dallas was right there without Dak last year. If healthy, there's no reason why this team can't win the division and get a top 4 seed. It's just you're just waiting for that other shoe to drop. Statistically speaking, there is value on them finally because nobody thinks they're going to get done. And I don't want to throw your Canes under the bus, but Dallas, Texas, Miami, they're all very big public programs that August is amazing. They're the best August teams in football. The Hurricanes delivered last year. Texas has yet to deliver, and Dallas has yet to deliver. So those big name programs, USC is another one. I went on Sportsline last week, and they asked me, give me one team not named Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon that could make the playoff out of the Big Ten. And the last thing I wanted to do was say USC, but I said USC because the talent's there and the coaching's there, but what's going to prevent it? They step in their own. So.
Yeah, I mean, talk about some of the most delusional fan bases of all time. University of Miami has to be up there with the Cowboys there. I like to say it and coin it this way. I don't really look at August 1st and say, I think this is the best team. I look at rosters and say, this looks like the best roster heading into the start of the NFL season. We all know that changes by the end of the year due to attrition and the injury factor. Rams, obviously, right? They go out and get Trent McDuffie. They go out and get Myles Garrett. Plus, you've got, like, Matthew Stafford coming off of an MVP season. That's the best roster in football today, right, on August 1st.
No doubt. That's the best roster. That's my Super Bowl pick. They were the best roster last year as well. You're talking about a blown fourth quarter lead on the road in Seattle with a very controversial 2-point conversion and then ridiculousness in overtime away from the Rams hosting the NFC title game, being the 1 seed, potentially winning that Super Bowl. Give all the credit to Seattle. They made the comeback at home. They won the Thursday night game. They got the 1 seed. They beat other teams to clinch that 1 seed and hosted the NFC Championship game at home. But that's a coin flip. The LA Rams absolutely could be the defending Super Bowl champions, and I think they use that to their advantage and come out this year and just they're the best team, and I think they run away with it. They have the roster, and I mean, you're going to add Aaron Donald to that? You got Myles Garrett. They're already the best team. You mentioned the MVP and Matt Stafford. You got outstanding wide receivers, a top 10 running back, an awesome defense, a coach that I would beg to have. There's no holes in that team other than the fact that they played in a tough division and had to go play 3 games to try to get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, they didn't play great against Carolina. They didn't play great against Chicago, but they absolutely could have won the game in Seattle. And if they were hosting, we're talking about a completely different scenario. And they also know that they get to host the Super Bowl this year. Just throwing that out there. They get to host it.
You know, I want to take you to Chicago and to Caleb Williams. I mean, a year ago, 55% completion percentage. He's a spectacular talent. And everybody in that division as well. You know, I mean, as we mentioned, they finished over 500. Could we see a scenario where Chicago finishes in last? Detroit wins that division because we could see a turnover. Because remember, Detroit's going to get the 4th place schedule because they finished in last place, and Chicago's going to get a 1st place schedule. How do you look at the Bears this year going into 26?
I don't think the Bears are actually getting enough credit. Right now, they're 3-1 to win the division, which is 3rd, and some books they're 4th behind Minnesota. They can absolutely win this division. Are they the most talented team? No. Do they have the best coach? Yes. Do they have a capable quarterback that can win this division? Absolutely. The odds are telling you that nobody believes in them. Could they finish 4th? Yes. Could they finish 1st? Yes. It's the one division in football, Dan, that if you blindly put all 4 teams in a hat and did the bingo card, I would say absolutely every single one of those options is possible. The last one being Minnesota. I think they're good, not great, but I think Chicago, Detroit, or Green Bay can finish at the top or finish at the bottom. We saw Detroit, who was a team that should have been in the Super Bowl the year before, had the 1 seed, was there, and they missed the playoffs and were the 4th team in that division. That could happen again to Chicago. It could happen to anybody.
All right. You like my pick? Ohio State and the Canes in the national championship game this year.
It's hard to not like that. I mean, it's not one I'd want to watch. Just kidding. Ohio State is the best team in football. They are the best team. They're the best roster. You know, Ryan Day hasn't lost more than 2 games in any season. I have them number 1. Miami has it in front of them. They have the talent. They did it last year. They can absolutely get back to that. Keep an eye on Oregon. I think this could be a year that Oregon pulls off in Indiana from last year. And then, you never say no to a Georgia out of the SEC or Alabama or even LSU. So,
come on, I got to get a gator to go, Kane. Sileo.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. We've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
I want to take you back a little bit to last weekend when I had my producer, Robert, give me some information that Kyle Shanahan was in a car accident. And I was like, wow, Kyle Shanahan was in a car accident. Breaking news. He's like, no. This is when we went to timeout. No. This happened 3 weeks ago. What? The head football coach of the San Francisco 49ers was in a severe car accident and nobody knew anything about it. This is more of an indictment on journalism today than it is about the actual incident. And it also questions the relationship between ESPN and the National Football League. So let me give you context of what I'm saying here on this. So when I got told the story that Kyle Shanahan was in a car accident, I had no understanding that it was a month ago almost. So I went back and looked at the timelines for Adam Schefter, ESPN, and how they posted it. So the story broke, and within a minute, ESPN had a full story on what had happened to Kyle Shanahan in this car accident. He had broken his nose, lacerations to the face. He had broken ribs, numerous other injuries, and he is going to miss training camp. And there was a conversation that he could potentially miss the opener against the Rams in Melbourne, Australia. Then you take a look at Adam Schefter. Another minute after that, he puts out a complete dossier of what happened. This questions the journalism. We just went through Diana Rossini and her practices on how she went and got information. So let me get this right. The National Football League, who owns 10% of ESPN, is embargoing stories and letting us know when certain guys are injured and what have you so that they can get ahead of stories. How do you trust the journalists that are covering the sport that you love or any sport when these people have a working relationship with the National Football League? How can you believe anything that comes out of the league when you've got a relationship with a place that has 10% ownership in ESPN? When the NFL Network was sold, ESPN gave the NFL 10% of the network. How do you trust anything that comes out of the journalists that are covering the sport when you're embargoing stories. Look, my job is not to be in bed with an NFL team or a league. My job is to give my viewers and my listeners storylines, and I want to talk about things that they haven't been able to cover yet. I want to give you intel on why this happened. How can you call yourself a journalist when you're holding stories? How do you know you're not being fed poor information to put stories out? We just got through going through Diana Rossini. Now we're watching this. Go look at the timelines. ESPN, Adam Schefter, the whole thing with gambling, Schefter in bed with Bob Kraft in those betting apps that they're having partnership with. He's also with a relationship with DraftKings. Don't tell me that journalism is alive when you're seeing stories like this. Kyle Shanahan is considered, The Athletic just put it out this last week, as the best coordinator in pro football. So the best guy and the best play caller in pro football was in a severe car accident, and the National Football League didn't think that that was a story. I heard Dan Patrick all week talking, going, there's something wrong with this here. It's totally something wrong with it. You talk about not covering the sport, and you work with the NFL. If you're not putting stories out, you are an employee of a National Football League team. Your job is to go out and serve your viewers, not serve the team that you're covering. You've lost me. I mean, we just went through, like I said, the Diana Rossini, people throwing shade on her and how she got her information, and wrongfully so. But at the end of the day, what's the difference here when you've got ESPN and all the rest of these guys? And again, there's a collection and a group of guys that get these text messages all the time on storylines. That Jalen Carter deal, once it got done, the defensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, Adam Schefter had all the particulars on everything inside that contract, including a weight loss clause that was in the contract. How can you be that detailed on a story on a contract, but then be 3 weeks late on the head football coach of the San Francisco 49ers being in a severe car wreck? Was there alcohol related? Is there an issue with the police? This is a shaky story, to say the least. And the lines went up and down, just to keep that in context. George Kurtz, I'll open up with him with this. We'll do that now or do next.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point, just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. You know, we've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry up. And then immediately they do some hurry up, 2-minute warning, and they look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
All right, hour number 2 here, and all 32 teams are in camp as we get ready and prepping for the NFL start of the season. Believe it or not, Thursday is the Hall of Fame game between the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals. George Kurtz joins us now here. George, I want to start this off with this Kyle Shanahan story, and I don't want to pollute the question to you here, but what was your takeaway on how that thing was reported? When the guys told me here last week, George, I thought it just happened. And then Robert goes like this. He's like, no. This was 3 weeks ago. I'm like, 3 weeks ago? What was your takeaway on it?
My takeaway is what we see that's wrong in a lot of these, you want to call them cover-ups or delayed. If you just report it right away, let's just say it happened July 14th. Report it on July 14th. Hey, listen, our head coach, Kyle Shanahan, was involved in an auto accident today. There are no major injuries. He'll be okay, but he'll be away from the team for 2 weeks. Guess what? It's a story, don't get me wrong, but we're not flipping out about it. Accidents happen. We've all been in them. At least I think we've all been in them. But when you delay it for 2 weeks, now all the antennas are up, right? We have red flags all over the place. And I agree with everything you said. Something else is going on here. We all know that. What it is, I don't know. Adam Schefter and the guys who delayed the story. Now, listen, if I'm Schefter, I'm an insider, and the Niners go, listen, we'll give you 3 major stories down the road if you hide this. Okay. Maybe I can do that. But if he's just doing it out of a favor, oh, yeah, sure, why not? I'll hold it for 2 weeks. That's not good journalism. It's not. But he's probably trying to incur favor to get something else down the line, I guess a bigger, better scoop. What that would be, other than Kyle Shanahan getting into an accident, I do not know. That's a pretty major story you could have broke there. But I'm guessing he's getting some kind of favor for holding on to it for a couple of weeks. But just bad on the PR side all around.
Boy, I'll tell you, man, I mean, wow, here, can you report this? They want to talk about Diana Rossini and how she got her information. And all of a sudden, I'm looking around going, well, wait a minute here. How do I know all the stuff that you're not giving me is true? How do I know that some of the intel, you're just putting a story out because you want a story out there? I think yet still a lot to come on this one here. Well, George, I know who you love in football, and it's August 1st. And boy, I'm hearing a lot of barking over there in Cowboy camp. And I got to tell you, I want to hear the barking in February and January, not in July and August. 2026 Cowboys will be what?
I'll tell you one thing. Dallas had better win their first 2 games, right? You got a couple of division games against the Giants and Commanders. And those are not givens, by the way. Those Giants and Commanders are both better teams. Are the Cowboys better than them? Probably. But you better win those because after that, and you and I discussed this, Dan, you're in the schedule from hell, right? Baltimore, Houston, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Philadelphia in that stretch. If you go 1-1 in those first 2 games, you can easily be, 3-4? And we might, as a Cowboy fan, I might take 3-4, by the way. You tell me right now, Cowboys be 3-4 going into week 8 against Arizona? I might take that because the schedule does get easier after that. But those first 7 games, including the game in Brazil, by the way, against Baltimore, that's going to be rough there. I think the Cowboy offense we know is good, right? At least they're good in games that don't matter. We'll see what Dak does when the games do matter. But that offense should score points. I think the defense is better. Is it good enough? Well, that's the question, Dan. That's the question. And we really won't know until week 1.
Do you think that Dak Prescott is a modern-day Danny White when it comes to Cowboy history? Now, Danny White actually went to NFC Championship games and actually went to significant ball games. Right. I mean, maybe a little bit underrated when you're talking about Cowboy quarterbacks. How do you look at Dak and his history there with the team?
I'm going to go to Danny White, who I am a huge fan of, okay? Danny White does not get the recognition he deserves. Listen, was he Roger? No. Is he Troy? No. Those are Hall of Famers, two of the best ever. But in my mind, he's the 3rd best Cowboy quarterback ever. Now, I only go back to Roger. I didn't see Danny Don play, so I can't answer that. But since I've been watching, and I saw Roger, Danny, Troy, then everybody that came after, before Troy, and all that garbage, then after Troy, he's the 3rd best quarterback. Yes, he didn't win the games against Philadelphia, Washington, San Francisco. All right, Philadelphia, Washington, they didn't have a chance against, right? They were better teams. Eagles and Redskins at that time were better teams on the road. I think they should have beaten the 49ers. Everyone says, everyone's about the catch. They all forget the Cowboys were driving down after the catch. Drew Pearson got the shoestring tackle, whatever it was here. He was gone, and the Cowboys still had the ball at the 45 here. A center snap fumble exchange between Danny White and Rafferty, and that was the end of the game there. Those Cowboys might have kicked that game-winning field goal. Yes, Dan, I might still be a little upset about this 35 years later. Was it 45 years later? It might bother me a little bit. So Dak, I mean, he doesn't win big games. The numbers will tell you that. I'm not just saying this because I'm angry. I mean, you look at his numbers against mediocre teams. They're Hall of Fame numbers. When it comes to playoffs or get big games outside of the NFC East, he does not play well. The numbers are horrific. I mean, they're bad. I keep going back to the last time they lost to the 49ers in the playoffs at home. And, Randy Gregory had the ex-Cowboy had the meeting after the game. And he says, you all know why we lost. We all know why we lost. There's a reason he's no longer on the team after that, because he was saying they lost because of Dak Prescott and how bad he played. And he did. We're a gambling network here at SportsGrid. I can tell you a story here. When they played Green Bay, I thought the Cowboys were going to beat Green Bay. I felt really good about Cowboys beating Green Bay here. I saw the first series from Dak and how he was aiming the ball. I emptied my account on Green Bay. Because you could just see it. He was a deer in the headlights. He is not a pressure quarterback.
I'll use an old word my grandpa used to use back in the day. That was a shellacking that Green Bay put on the Cowboys there. All right, what's the encore, in your opinion, for Seattle this coming season?
I don't know. Losing Kenneth Walker's a big loss here. The defense is good, right? A little older, but good. Secondary, I think, is a little problems there. Now, I think they were not a great team, but a really good team last year. Things sort of went right there. All right, we'll see. Listen, that has to happen. When I say that, I don't degrade a team here. Things have to go right for you to win a championship. You need to stay healthy. Maybe get the right matchups there. New England probably had no business being there, but they got the right matchups, got hot at the right time. Away we go. I think that division is a division from hell. Okay, you got the Hawks, right? That they're going to be there. The Rams we know the Rams are gearing up for Bear. Right? Is Aaron Donald returning? And this is ridiculous here. What's going on with them? The 49ers, okay, they've got some interesting problems that we just discussed as far as Shanahan, no Pearsall, you re-signed Debo, the Brandon Ayuk thing, which by the way is hilarious, is still there as well here. I think you might just release him and move on. I know you want to screw him over till September 1st when you have to pay him, so that's when you release him, but you might want to move on. But they're there as well. I think it might be one of the best divisions in football here. I like the Rams over the Hawks, and the Hawks I think are definitely a playoff team.
Well, they got Debo back, so I'm sure that's going to be like a difference maker in San Francisco. Hopefully you stayed off the hamburgers a little bit here. I want to get your takeaway on Chicago. I mean, do you think they make a step back, or do you think they continue the evolution of what we want to see here with Caleb Williams here? I mean, here's a guy that was 55% completion percentage. He's really athletic. He's really spectacular. But, you've got to be accurate in this league from that position of quarterback. I mean, where do you see the Bears going?
If you want to be funny here, isn't he the anti-Dak? He's sort of the opposite, right? He doesn't complete the passes, but he does come up in big moments, right? He makes the big plays when you need them. I don't know which one you want more here, because you're going to lose some gains, goes to the 55%. And this day in the NFL, that's got to come up considerably, right? They want to close to 67, 68, because you got a lot of easy dump offs there you have to hit there. He doesn't do that. He's got the weapons around him: Adunze, Burden, Raymond. I love, by the way, Colson loves him. I think he's going to be top 3, top 4 tight end in the game this year. Love him. The running game is, I think, good enough with Swift and Mananjai. They've gotten better on defense, gotten better at the offensive line. I think that's probably the best division of football, though. Bears, Packers, Lions, Vikings. Oh my! So I think that's going to be a very tough division here. I think they're better than they were last year, but they might take a step back because of a division they play in there. It's like I said, I'm going to love to watch that division all season long. I think Caleb will play better, by the way. Maybe not to the 67% completion percentage, but I think he does get over 60 this year. So I think he does take a significant step.
So you look at that division and you look at them in the NFC West, and I agree with you, though. I still think the Central Division, we're going to get more here with George and talk more with George here, because I agree with him. I think that Central Division and the West, I think that's your two best teams in the NFC here. But our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America, for a reason, and that is because they win. There is no firm like Morgan & Morgan. Told you about the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family down in Florida that was initially offered $350K. They got nearly $12 million. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales for Pound Law 529. That's FOR, thepeople.com/big sales or Pound Law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sales sent you. We will talk more with George Kurtz here and get his thoughts on Baker Mayfield. What's next for the Bucs? Keep it right here on SportsGrid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. You know, we've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You know, I wonder what Pete Rozelle would say about today's NFL. He must love it because he was a PR demon when he was back with the Rams before he became the commissioner of the National Football League. And all news is good news, according to the NFL these days. George Kurtz joins us now here. And I'm going to take you to Tampa Bay, my old stomping grounds there. Baker Mayfield was offered a 2-year contract extension. He sent it back with his agent saying, yeah, no, that's not it. And here's a guy that has bet on himself before, George. I mean, is he going to be a free agent at the end of this year? Do you think the Bucs somehow get something done here?
I mean, I think he put it perfectly in the press conference afterwards, right? Don't cry for me, all right? He's making $27 million. I'm making plenty of money here, but NFL quarterback wise, yeah, he got slapped in the face. He did. All right, that's just, and I don't think he's not one of the best quarterbacks, right? Probably outside the top 10, but he's an NFL starting quarterback, and they get paid, Tampa Bay. What are you going to do without him? I mean, what are you going to do? All right, you lost Mike Evans already. Vita Vea wants to get the hell out of there, right? You got problems with him. So all your PR is just terrible, just awful here. So, listen, they could go with that direction there and franchise him next year, which they probably I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't see that happening. And I actually think a franchise in the next 2 years. I think the numbers I heard were high 40s next year, mid 50s the year after. So theoretically, you could pay him, $130 million over the next 3 years, all guaranteed. So once again, not crying for Baker Mayfield, but is he making true quarterback one starter money? No. So as far as that's concerned, I see his point, and it's not a good look for Tampa Bay because Baker probably has earned it. Got hurt last year. Maybe they want him to prove it this year. All right, but the problem is, I'm the Cowboy fan. Jerry Jones never learns this lesson. The price only gets higher. It's not going down. All right. If you're thinking, maybe we should sign Baker long term, then do it. You'll save money in the long term. If you're waiting for him, he has a good year. You're only going to pay through the nose. It doesn't make any sense.
I call it the Jerry Jones tax. If you wait too long, that's the Jerry Jones tax, like he always does, because Jerry ends up paying that tax here. Let me take you to Vegas here and what they're doing there with Clint Kubiak and with Fernando Mendoza. They're going to start Kirk Cousins, they're at the starting quarterback. Good move to get him acclimated to the game. You think that's a good way to go with him? Or would you see, to me, George, I want to know what I have immediately. And I know that the Raiders don't have a very good roster, but I want to know what I have now. And I want to see what I have. Are you in the camp of let's see him matriculate his game in. Let's see how he can handle the National Football League. Do you think this is the right play here?
Without us actually being there in camp, all right, my philosophy has always been this. As soon as you think Mendoza's ready and you're not going to set him back, he's in there. You already said the Raiders aren't going to be a good team. Well, and once again, you're the worst team in that division. Chargers, Raiders, Broncos. Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos. I'm sorry. You have no chance. All right, so as soon as you think he's ready, this is a throwaway year, right? The idea is you don't want next year to be a throwaway year as well. All right, so you get him over the rookie blues at some point. I've been looking at the schedule for the Raiders. Like, when's the perfect opportunity? It's not the bye week. That's after week 12. That's too late. He's got to play more than 5 games. And their schedule, I mean, you got Chargers week 2, Kansas City week 4, New England 5, Buffalo 6, Rams 7. Boy, you really don't want to put him in there either. So is it really week 8 in New York? I know it's the Jets, but it's still week 8 in New York, and you got San Fran on the road the next week. That's not great either. In Seattle, Denver. The bottom line is this. There's no perfect time. So once again, I go back to this. If he's ready week 1, he plays week 1. If it's week 4, he plays week 4. If it's Halloween, he plays Halloween. But in my mind, he has to play at least 8 to 10 games this season. So I want the rookie blues done this season, and then we work next year. And I don't care if I go 3-14. I'll take another number 1, number 2, number 3 pick. You're building up for the future anyway. This year is all about getting Mendoza over that hump.
I'm going to drop a bunt with you here and go over to baseball. Trading deadline, your Yankees. Active, not active, little bit. Tell me where you think New York goes.
The problem with the Yankees is there aren't a lot of bats out there. All right, there's a lot of pitching out there, and the Yankees don't really need pitching, starting pitching. They could use bullpen help, sure. Also, the prices are nuts. Now, of course, it's July, August 1st now. The deadline's not till the 3rd. It's not the 31st. Obviously, it wasn't yesterday. So we got a couple more days here. But the prices are nuts. I mean, the Tigers for school pretty much your first, second, third, your house, maybe your wife and your girlfriend on the side, too. They want everything for school. All right, that price will come down by 4 o'clock Monday. Same thing with the other players here. Will the Yankees be involved? Sure. I think they'll make some moves here. Do I think it's going to be any page turners? No. It's just not out there. And by the way, the Yankees also have to worry about this. Let's just say for giggles here, they get a good bat, a good outfielder. What happens when Judge comes back, when Bellinger comes back? You got too many players now for too few spots, so it sort of defeats the purpose anyway here. Yankees are in a lot of trouble here. They didn't build the roster correctly. Not that anyone's going to be able to survive all the injuries here. They have the pitching. We've seen it this week. The Yankees starting pitching is giving up 1 run of the last 3 games. Yet, Dan, they are 1-2 as they have scored now 4 runs in I think the last 30 innings. They can't hit, and I don't think the trading deadline's going to solve that problem.
I think this would be a massive problem for New York, and maybe even Boston, who's now in it as well when it comes to wild card. Eric Neander, the general manager of the Rays, is talking about a rental with Skubal. You put him in that pitching staff, that East is over. End up getting him in there. Would you agree that, this looks like brand new ownership now? This is not Stu Sternberg. This is a different owner now. Looks like they're doing some things differently down there now, wanting to be proactive. And they're going to be, Bob Nightengale was on with just a couple minutes ago, and he was saying he thinks they're going to be very active. That's a different Rays organization if they're going to be active on the trading deadline.
I would agree. People have to remember, some people laugh, the Rays aren't going to get him. The Rays, for what we've heard, pretty much were in second place to get Ohtani back in the day. That's right. All right, when the Rangers, they were serious about getting him, then the Angels held them back. Huge mistake by the Angels, but that's a story for another day here. So, yeah, I think the Rays would go for it. I think they'd like to win. They know they're not going to pay Skubal $400 million next year, no doubt about that. But I think they're going to be in here to get him for this year. All right, so as a Yankee fan, do I want to see him go there? Of course not. I don't want to see him in the American League. I don't want him going to Boston. I don't want him going to Seattle. I don't want him going to the White Sox. Go to the Dodgers. I don't care. But, yeah, I think Tampa Bay would be a huge problem if he does end up there. And listen, they just put McClanahan on the IL, right? Not something a long-term thing. There's a couple of starts to him this year. But that could be another reason for them to push, as they know they're starting pitching really good, but also that's going to have some question marks going into October.
Man, especially when you look at the American League this year too, George. It's been mediocre baseball, and you got everybody, get this, within 4 ball games of a playoff spot, whether it's a wild card or whether it's a division title now in the American League. And you're like, how proactive are teams going to be right now when you're still in this thing? Especially, again, you're looking at teams like the Red Sox here. George, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to talk about A.J. Brown, who I like to call A.J. Owen. I'll explain next here on Sports Grid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. You know, we've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Man, there's so many storylines getting ready for the National Football League as we prep up for it. All 32 teams, as we've been saying today, are in camp. First game is going to be Thursday, Arizona versus Carolina. Hall of Fame week next week. We'll see the inductees going in to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So the storylines that I'm already looking at are New England versus Philadelphia. By the way, they have an inter-squad practice this coming month, and I can't wait to see how that thing's going to shake out. And you get, as I like to dub him, A.J. Owens. And you're like, who's A.J. Owens? Well, that's A.J. Brown. And I've been calling A.J. Brown A.J. Owens since he landed in Philadelphia. And when you look at his pre-draft profile, go back and look at it. A guy has issues on being focused. A guy sometimes has issues when it comes to character. Well, I knew who he was. Philadelphia is just learning now who he is. And you already hear him complaining up in New England. But here lies the difference as you see the shots and the subtle shots being thrown back and forth between the Eagles and the Patriots. They're not letting this go. Jalen Hurts, on his introduction press conference for the first time in 2026 as they were getting ready for camp, said this: we have 100% alignment, 0% entitlement. Well, who do you think he's taking a shot at? He's taking a shot at A.J. Brown. We don't have players on this team that feel entitled. We are now all in alignment. That shows you some of the distraction that was on that Philadelphia Eagle team a year ago. And we'll also say this: that's the responsibility of both the quarterback and the head football coach to right the ship when you have an issue like that. Now you fast forward that up to New England. What does A.J. Brown say? He was getting hammered on by Mike Vrabel, his new head coach. It actually was his coach when he was in Tennessee. And what does A.J. Brown say? A.J. Brown goes, I know when Mike's on me, it's coming from a place of love. I've never heard him talk about Nick Sirianni in any fashion like that in his 4 years in Philadelphia. Let's not forget something, too. You're never going to make that player happy. Put this in context. 4 years, 50 and 18, 2 NFC championships. He got a $32 million annual deal. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He's got some of the most yards in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles over a 5-year span. And he wasn't happy. Now he's glazing over Drake May. Guy's unbelievable. One of the greatest arm talents I've ever seen. Can't believe how great he is. He's a special guy. Never at any time did you hear A.J. Brown talking that highly of Jalen Hurts when he was in Philadelphia. You always got the cryptic messages, the reading of the books on the sidelines, the not being used, being critical when it came to the play caller, Kevin Patullo, of a year ago, being particular of the quarterback not having the skill set that he's talking about now with Drake May. Always throwing behind. Here's a direct quote, as I like to call him, A.J. Owens. They're not really letting him throw the ball right now, so I don't like that. Here we go. First practice they had, though, yesterday, they were glazing one another. First full practice. All they were doing was talking how highly they looking at each other. Look, they're going back and forth. The impact that A.J. Brown will have on the New England Patriots this year, in my opinion, will be enormous. If that guy can stay healthy, who did they have a year ago? The Boston Strangler? Stephon Diggs? That's who you had a year ago as your number one guy? Well, now you've got a real bona fide number one up there, and you've got A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is not quite Owens, okay? He's more strategic in how he complains. He's more strategic in how he goes about his business. He's a very productive football player, and I still think he's one of the top 10 players in his respected position in the National Football League when it comes to playing at wideout. And I think Drake May is going to benefit mightily from him. Also, let's not forget something else. A.J. Brown is now in a position in New England where you've got Josh McDaniels, who's one of the best play callers in all of the National Football League, and you've got one of the better signal callers in Drake May. Like Drake May since he came out of North Carolina a couple of years ago, and I think this is going to be a great year for him. On the other hand, down in Philly, let's see if Jalen Hurts can win without a loaded team. It's not the same football team as 4 years ago when they went to their first Super Bowl in 22. It's a lesser football team. Outside of Devontae Smith, it's dudes. You got Hollywood Brown, Elijah Moore, you got Mekhi Lemon, who's struggling already in camp, and you really don't have explosive players. We're going to keep an eye on this all year long. See if the Patriots can get back to an AFC championship and if the Eagles can win without A.J. Brown. We'll talk more NFL with Hall of Fame voter Jason Cole next here on SportsGrid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. You know, we've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there, but I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live only on SportsGrid.
Really, I can't wait for the upcoming 2026 NFL season. It's really going to be a great year this year. So many storylines. And what makes the NFL great, you really don't know heading into training camp, the teams that you think are going to end up going out and winning the Super Bowl, because it's all about the war of attrition. And one of my favorite people that I love talking to, Hall of Fame voter Jason Cole. And Jason, before I get on the field, I want to take you to this Kyle Shanahan story. And, we've been going over it. Dan Patrick has been really hammering it this week. And I want to get your takeaway on it. The NFL owns 10% of ESPN now. And you're putting embargo stories on Kyle Shanahan. When I first heard the information that he was in an accident, Chase, I didn't realize it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that this whole thing happened. How do you take and how this thing was reported? The head football coach was in a severe car accident.
Well, there's a debate whether it's severe. Palo Alto police certainly don't consider it severe. He had severe injuries, so I guess the injuries indicate something else. Look, I blame this mostly on local media not being as on top of the game as they used to be. Like, this wouldn't have gotten by 20 years ago. And that's not to say that good people aren't trying to report, but it's easier to hide things now. And yeah, you have some cooperation from ESPN, but ultimately ESPN knows the story's coming out anyways, right? So do they care whether it comes out on the day, a day or two after, or if it comes out 10 days later? They don't really care because they don't really have much competition, because there's not much competition at the local level. And there are not reporters who are doggedly trying to find stuff out. And there just aren't that many newspapers. I worked in the Bay Area for a long time. There used to be, 5, 6, 7, 9 newspapers in the Bay Area. Now there's essentially 3. And so there's just fewer bodies to cover these kinds of stories. And they're my office, when I was working there, was 4 blocks from the Palo Alto police station. Okay. So I knew the Palo Alto cops. I knew the Redwood City cops. I knew the Los Altos cops. I knew those people. We had connections. We had multiple editors who knew the cops who worked in those towns. The way things now are right now, you don't have people who know who the cops are or the administrators are in these places. So the death of local newspapers is the biggest reason why you don't see this. And so, again, places can get away with protecting a story or keeping it hushed up for a while. It's eventually going to come out because there's nobody else who's going to go after it. It just doesn't exist. And even when there were newspapers, look, police stations can make stuff go away if they want. They can hide stuff if they want to. And let's just say there's a very famous quarterback who supposedly had something in the Bay Area go away, right? When it comes to a traffic infraction. So I'll just leave that at that, okay? And that's the rumor. That's why I won't give you any more information than that. But the story has been recounted some other places.
Well, I will put this out there too. There was a famous wide receiver that was in that market that also had a very unfortunate arrest that seemingly went away. I won't name that very, 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 very famous wide receiver that had a story go away, but it did. So let me take you to a story we can comment on.
Let's just say stuff happens.
Stuff happens, right? Okay.
Stuff happens.
All right. Let's go to Tampa here. What's your takeaway on how this thing's going to be resolved with the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield? Take a look at this. So they lose Mike Evans. He's now in San Francisco. He said, I wanted to go to a Super Bowl contender. Vita Vea wants to go to San Francisco now and play with Kyle Shanahan as well. And now Baker Mayfield's pissed off. I mean, what's going on with Jason Light and the Buccaneers? And do you think they get this thing done?
Stop being cheap. Look, and I know that people are going to say, they offered him $100 million for 2 years. That's an amazing contract. Yes, it is for any normal human being, okay? It's an ungodly amount of money. It's an obscene amount of money. In the quarterback market, the way it's supposed to be run, look at Brock Purdy's contract from a year ago. It's 5 years, $260 million, with 150 or 160 guaranteed. Is Baker Mayfield as good as Brock Purdy? Kind of 6-1, half dozen of the other. I might take, Baker Mayfield on certain days. I might take Brock Purdy. But that's the going market. Like, why does Baker Mayfield have to play on another make-good contract when he's already played on 2 make-good contracts? He's looking at going, look, you can pay me or not pay me, but I'll go out in the marketplace a year from now and I'll do fine. I'll get 5 years. I'll get $260, $270 million. Somebody will guarantee me $150 or $160 million. That's just the way it's going to be, as long as I have a decent year. Now, he'd rather not take the risk of getting hurt and all those other things, but stop trying to get away with a 2-year deal. That's not how this works. And I know there are all sorts of other people who sit there and go, you've got to draw a line on these quarterbacks and you can't overpay these guys and blah, 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 blah. Okay, that sounds great. Why don't you try being the Dolphins for the last 26 years? Why don't you try and be Cleveland for the last 30 years? Why don't you be the Jets for the last 30 years or whatever it's been, where you have no franchise quarterback? When you get a guy who's a good player, you got to figure out how to keep him. That's just the way it goes. And gambling on next year is always just a gamble on next year.
This goes to the Glazers, like you just said. They're not all in on Baker Mayfield like they were all in on Brady. They're not all in on Baker
don't
Mayfield.
Compare, let's not put him in that. That's not the discussion, okay?
They brought assets in for Brady. They're not bringing assets in. They're leaving. Assets are leaving under Baker Mayfield.
I understand that, but I'm not sure that I'm all that worried about keeping Mike Evans on a long-term deal. I'm not, Vita Vea, like the mileage is there, right?
31. He's 31.
Yeah, and that's not a position where guys hold up. You played that position, not that exact position, not that exact way, but that's a meat grinder position. Guys, end up out of the league a lot faster. You don't end up with a lot of guys like Vince Wilfork who play that position for 11 or 12 years. So are you going to invest a ton of capital in Vita Vea? No, you're not. And he's pushing for a new contract because he knows he needs one now because he can't afford to wait. So this is contracts. This is modern contracts in the NFL. And the reason I don't compare Brady to Baker is that Brady and Baker are in two very different places in their career. Okay. And Brady could afford to take less to go prove the point that he wanted to prove. And he was not looking for a 5 or 6 year contract to make all the money that he needed to make, in his contract, because basically Brady was looking at, Brady's life is so easy from a financial standpoint. He ain't ever going broke. Come on. There's two very different lives.
Tom Brady going broke? No, but especially now that we're probably going to see him today in SummerSlam, because now he's smacking Jake Paul around and we're changing the entire narrative on who Tom Brady is. Hey, dude, I get it. You want to be like a TV. I know, man. I mean, dude, you're Tom Brady. Look like and act like it here a little bit. So, I mean, I don't know. You see him slap him?
I did.
Thank you. That's all that's to be said. We're going to go to the next block here. I want to get Jason's thoughts on his favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. They're barking in August again. Let's see if they're barking in February. We'll talk next here on SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter?
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
You know, it always pains me to like have to do this to people, but you know, I'm part of the worst union in the history of American sports, and that is the NFL Players Association. Because once again, you know, one of my friends passes away by the name of Billy Ray Smith Jr. His father also had dementia when he passed away. You know, it's funny, Jace. I think what's going to happen with that lawsuit that we have, what's going to happen is there's only 16,500 of us alive that have ever played the game, because only 29,000 have ever played it. They're just going to wait for us all to die. And they're not going to have to pay any of us all off. So what they're going to do is they're just going to wait for people to die. And as you said in the break, it's probably going to be less of these situations, but you would agree right now that the NFL doesn't do enough when it comes to players and when it comes to player safety and their health as they move forward after the game.
No, but I'm always caught in what are you supposed to do? I mean,
and Jason, to be fair, I'd do it all over again.
Yeah, of course you would, because that's, you want to play and you want to prove yourself, and you want to play in a man's game, and you know, go up against guys and test your will and your strength and all those other things. And the money is good too. Like, you're not going to make that kind of money doing anything else, right? Especially at that age. So for most guys, yeah, they do it all over again. For a few guys, they're smart enough to walk away, or they have the ability to walk away. Good for them. Look, the only thing that I've ever been really, really upset with the NFL about is, you know, when Tagliabue ran all those false studies, all that fake And that, they call it the mild, trauma. It's like trauma is by definition can't be mild. Okay. That's an oxymoron, right? And all these games that they tried to play because they were worried about, whether moms would let their kids play. Well, when you hide it from people, it's just worse. When you don't tell people what it is, you make it a bigger headline. If you come out and you say, look, this is what it is, and you need to be very careful when you play, we're telling you have to be careful when you play, and we don't want you to play if you're dinged up, and, don't go out on the field. If you tell guys that straight up, but say, understand we're in a competitive game where we're trying to win trying to win. People want to win championships. There's money on the line for a lot of different people. There's a lot of issues that go on, and then making the decision to not play if you're hurt, and the other side getting prepared so that you don't have to play if you get hurt. Those are things that are important that the NFL should tell guys. But I've always said it's not the NFL's job. It's not the NFL's job to prepare guys for it. It is the NFL's job to be honest and warn them about what it is, if that makes sense. And those are very fine layered points between them. But guys are going to make the decision to play. As you said, you would do it all over again because of a myriad of reasons, not the least of which is, what else are you going to do that makes that kind of cash?
Well, the thing that I would always, tell people is that I would do it all over again, but don't tell me that the helmets are safe. Don't give me Vicodins and Percocets and tell me that you have a stinger when I've got a grade 3 concussion, and you're giving, like, an equipment manager is giving me my medicine and putting them in my locker and telling me, hey, you got a stinger, get back out there. I mean, I'm glad that the NFL got the blue tent now. I think they're trying to do, and you mentioned it too, Jace, I think you're probably going to see lesser and lesser cases where people, because the NFL hates one thing, right? They hate being in courtrooms, and they don't want to be in a courtroom.
Right, and I think more guys are going to get, and the league does a better job. Does it do a great job? No, but does a better job of saying, look, this guy doesn't belong out on the field. I mean, like, you and I both watched football in the 70s. There are a lot of dudes who staggered around on the field and and then, cleared their head, and then ended up back out on the field. How do you exactly clear your head? Well, there probably wasn't much going on there at that point after you got walloped, on that hit. I just saw a replay of a Kenny Anderson hit. Oh my God. On, the other from the 70s, where he ducked away from one, got up, and stood up, and then the guy from the wide side just hit him so hard, and it was on a turf field, and I was like, oh my God. It was like those really thin turf fields. You can tell the old pale gray fields that didn't have any cushioning, didn't have any AstroTurf on them. You're just like, oh my God, that's like playing on a basketball court, in the middle of some city in America. That's basically what he was playing on. So things are better. They're never going to be great, but the NFL just needs to be responsible at being honest with guys.
Absolutely. And by the way, those fields stunk too, because they really didn't do a good job washing those fields back in the day. It is Hall of Fame week, Jace. Are you expecting any different? I talked to Armando a couple days ago, and I was waiting for you guys to have like a meeting of the smoke. When you pick a new pope, the smoke comes out, and we know who the pope is. So I've been waiting for some kind of like some information if there's going to be a new procedure on how you guys are going to pick these upcoming Hall of Famers for the following class. Any news on what's going on with the NFL Hall of Fame?
Not a peep. Not a peep on any changes, anything different that
they
might do.
Is that a good thing or bad thing? Is that a good thing or bad thing?
Well, I mean, considering we have a voting system in which Bill Belichick and Bob Kraft didn't get in last year, and we put in one senior candidate over those two guys, Roger Craig. Roger Craig's certainly a fine candidate, but he is not a better candidate than Bob Kraft or Bill Belichick. The fact that we have that, the fact we haven't made a change in that system yet, or it hasn't been announced, is disappointing. But, I said my piece to Jim Porter after the season. We had a conversation about it, and I gave him my opinions. He's got to work through the politics of the people who run the Hall of Fame. There's a lot to do there. And so we'll see. But if there's not some kind of change in that voting procedure, I'm going to be very disappointed.
50 men pick each class every single year, and you happen to be one of those. I mean, that's pretty cool seeing those guys like Luke Kuechly get into the Hall of Fame, or Drew Brees going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I can't wait for the upcoming class, too, with Gronk and all. My friend, it's always great. Thank you so much, Jason Cole, Pro Football Hall of Fame voter. Final thought, next, right here on SportsGrid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. We've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
We are just a couple weeks away from the start of the college football season. We're week 0. The Dublin game is going to be TCU versus UNC. Get a chance to see Bill Belichick in action for his second year there at UNC, running the North Carolina football program. Now, look, the North Carolina football program is not one of your high-end football programs in college football history. Obviously, that's no more for college basketball with Dean Smith, Michael Jordan, so on. So it's really not one of your mainstream college football programs. So when he ended up getting that job after not getting a job in the National Football League as a head football coach, Bill took the job at UNC there in Chapel Hill. Okay. Well, this past week, Mike Lombardi was suspended for conduct. And it's an interesting one because it's more of an administrative suspension here. UNC confirmed its investigation to the football program, and with general manager Mike Lombardi, who was with Belichick, by the way, in New England as a general manager there, after placing him on paid administrative leave earlier this week. The athletic director, Steve Newmark, said he expects an expedient process following human resources complaint filed by former football front office employees. What we're hearing is that Mike Lombardi was hiring people that Bill Belichick wanted and didn't go through a process on hiring and giving interviews for minority candidates. And this is one of the issues that he ended up falling in trouble with. And so the HR department there at UNC had a problem with the hiring practices of what Belichick was trying to do. Here lies the difference between the NFL and college football. You think that Rooney Rule works in the National Football League? The Rooney Rule is window dressing. When you're in a college atmosphere, you have to go by procedure. And this is what Bill Belichick doesn't understand. You're answering to people when you are in college football. The NFL, you run your own castle. You got your own moat. That's not the case in college football. And that's probably one of the cases that he's struggling being a head football coach right now in the college football ranks. Who would have thunk it? Nick Saban turned out to be a bum as an NFL head coach. Belichick was a superstar coach in the NFL, and Saban turned out to be a superstar college football coach. And what's turning out to be, and what may end up being, one of the worst experiments of all time from an NFL coach going down to the college level. You know, it used to be back in the day, college coaches can't cut it on the NFL level. Well, now that you've implemented nil and free agency, let's face it, transfer portal's code for free agency. Now that you've implemented that on the college football level, those NFL coaches going to the college level, that's just as tough a transition as a college guy going to the National Football League now. And what makes it even more different is that if you're a college football coach, why would I, if I'm Kurt Cignetti, want to go and coach the Tennessee Titans when I'm making $14 million a year? I'm making more money right now than the current head football coach of the Tennessee Titans, double. Why would I leave when I'm running my own football program in Bloomington? I wouldn't leave. And I have the total backing of the administration there in Bloomington at Indiana University. Look, this Belichick experiment looks like it's turning out to be a disaster. I don't really think Bill understood the landscape of how college football was changing as he got into the game, and you had to start paying kids, and you had to start going through free agency / transfer portal. Bill thought that you were just going to get a kid, pick a phone up, and the kid was going to want to come and play to you. You know what kids say today when they get calls from colleges? How much you paying me? Well, wait, I want you to come play for Bill Belichick. I don't care who you are. How much are you paying me, and am I on TV? You coach in the ACC? Great. How much you paying me? Well, I got a contract right now from Ole Miss for $800,000, and I'm seen every week on the SEC network. ESPN carries the Southeastern Conference. The exposure that I'm getting versus the ACC, no thank you. That's what kids are looking at today, and Bill's having a tough time understanding that. Look, recruiting in college football today, and the head football coach, Nick Saban, experienced this. He was calling kids and recruiting them. Hey, this is Nick Saban at Alabama. I'd like to have you come play for me. So? That's not that important any longer. Well, it's Saban. He's the head coach of Alabama. I don't care how much you paying me, and am I on TV? That's all we care about. That's all kids care about today. Building a brand, making money, being seen for scouts to see me, to have an opportunity to get drafted in the National Football League. Bill right now is on the cusp of being maybe one of the worst hires of all time. We'll see you Sunday. Catch you on the flip side.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. You know, we've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.